All right, thanks all for coming. We are here today to investigate in 20 minutes, so we won't finish, but to investigate the relationship between research and applied privacy protocols. To kind of motivate this a little bit, I just want to note that we all stand here kind of on the shoulders of giants, and for better or for worse, a lot of those giants were funded by actually state funding for research, especially in, 60s, 70s, 80s, some of the early developments in ZK snarks and other kind of technology just came out of the academy. We've done a lot of work, I think, to productionize them, but we depend on that. And my aim today is to investigate a little bit together which parts of that relationship between, say, the kinds of projects that all of us are working on and the research, both in principle, like research as such, and also the actual community of researchers, in which ways that relationship works well, in which ways it doesn't, and what kinds of alternative ways can we imagine it might work in the future. So I want to start off just with very brief introductions. You get only 2 sentences, and in the first sentence, introduce yourself and your project in 5 to 10 words. And in the second sentence, what is your favorite research paper, at least favorite recent research paper, and why?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Payman from Fairblock, and we work on encrypted transactions for applications like confidential auctions and like AI incentive layers. Is that 2 sentences?
You're
Okay,
doing well.
good.
And favorite research paper?
Oh, favorite
And why?
research paper? It's hard. I like Dan Bona's IB paper because we started everything based on that, but not for research reasons. But
Yeah. Hi everyone, this is Amit. I'm a co-founder of Labyrinth protocol. Labyrinth protocol is a privacy-preserving protocol where we keep user-owned privacy at the top of it. We try to balance privacy with compliance and more decentralized and more cryptographic guarantees. I would say my favorite paper, research paper, is the Zero Cash paper, because that's what it's all started, right?
One thing I like about the Zero Cash paper is that they have these progressive descriptions of protocols, right? It starts with very simple one, slightly more complex, slightly more complex. It's a really nice expedition. Okay, so now I want to dive a little bit into the relationship between research and sort of crypto technology, our kinds of applied uses of it. By asking, both of you, I think, work on projects that are in some way kind of trying to productionize research, or at least taking different components from the research literature and assembling them into some kind of product. And I want to ask you, how do you think about that relationship? Do you think about research as something that you do, as something that you consume? Do you think about it as something that you fund even? Or is it just sort of there in the ether and you're pulling parts and trying to assemble it? How do you think about your relationship as a project to research?
personally, one thing that I really find interesting in crypto is that, so personally, I was working on things like privacy-preserving ML, and in general, I'm originally from Iran, so we have a lot of, we care about privacy. We have the pain in the daily basis, but everyone is a little bit demotivated about privacy. It seems like something luxury that you should give up your Facebook and cat videos, and it's really hard and painful. But in crypto, it seems that at least I found it very motivating for myself, because in research, you find yourself in a lot of situations that you question the paper that you're working on. You don't know even if it works, even there's no if there's not going to be published or not, and what's the point? Am I getting solving a real problem or not? But in cryptography research, we've seen, it's even worse. You should work on a paper for 20 years and it may not be even used, right? But in crypto, you say you can see that if you use this kind of encryption, I can prevent MEV. It's a $3 billion market. If I work on this, I can work on intents. It's a $10 billion market. So I think it just motivates you better, and there's monetary immediate value to that. So maybe it's not a good thing that you just think about money, but I think it's just a really interesting middle ground that you can bring a lot of talent from academia, make them work, and accelerate the process of research and development, even for good reasons at the end of the day.
Right, so that your strategy is cannibalize the academy, steal all the good researchers, pay them more money, build real products.
You see that it's happening, right? 5 years ago, if you mentioned like blockchains to any privacy researcher in conferences, they were like saying, oh, like that's a scam or something. But right now we see that more and more people, like I'm from UWaterloo. So in UWaterloo, there are more and more people working on blockchains. In Colombia, like Stanford, like honestly, I think it's because of the money, but it's going to good cause.
Yeah. My take is slightly different, like how we and I personally have benefited from the research-based paradigm. I think what research taught us is about the persistent and the commitment towards the problem, and specifically about the privacy. Because like Zero Cache is one of the example. It started like one of the paper. We have tens of thousands of papers and like hundreds of researchers focused only on very slight, very small problems of privacy, and in which if you go to the practitioner space, they sometimes don't matter, right? They want something slightly different, the user. So that's what the pro of researchers, which we really benefit, of course, apart from the cryptographic expertise, right? The negative part, or like I would say, like which is in somewhat not in line with the crypto or the narratives or the user adoption, is kind of taking step back and trying to have this thesis that let's build the research out of it and somebody else will productionize it. But the privacy protocol building is very tough job, right? It's a fat protocol. It's not like a thin protocol. You need actually the research mindset developers. You need some of the community members who try to align with the research, right? Because how will you ensure to the community member that you are providing the privacy? The whole thing is tech-based, whole thing is research-based. So I think there, of course, everybody is doing their job, right? All the ecosystem, like if you look in deep down, like they are research-based. But the whole magic lies between how you convert and connect the research-based thesis to the users and also to the community. I think that's what it is.
I also want to investigate kind of what we understand as research that has implications for our work. So here so far we've just talked about what I will call technical research, but actually a few of the talks beforehand at least referenced maybe more social sciences research or anthropological research. And I'm curious, when you think about how these protocols might be used by people, or when you think about designing products and the kind of social structures, contexts of use that would surround those products, do you also draw on other sort of non-STEM research disciplines?
Oh yeah, so I'm the one of the example. Like in my PhD was in economics, and I have like few political economy paper institutions, like economic history as well.
Did that have like concrete implications for how you designed the protocol?
Yeah, like being into the STEM, I would say not a bubble, but like a monolithic domain actually makes you bias towards your own opinion. You are opinionated. But if you look in the wider, as you said, like anthropology research, social science research, you study the implications of your protocol. Like what would be the wider implications of privacy technology on the people? Who are the people who you should actually be able to convince short term? Who are the people who you will be able to convince long term? And who are the people who actually are waiting for some incentives to onboard to privacy tech? So social anthropological research teach about this. And one of the things which we and I learned is about those case studies, right? Those not quantitative, not like, trying to have cryptographic proof, like bit of an informal focus groups, right? You chat it out, right? What the solution is. So that's, I think, multidisciplinary is the key to the success. That's my personal learning.
So last time I talked about the money part. I think money is important for bringing a lot of people working on a lot of stuff in the meantime. But if you really want to go long and don't get distracted with all of the noises, especially in crypto, and then get motivated, I think most people who are making the highest influence in our ecosystem are deeply motivated by values. And that's the reason for me that every day that I wake up, I don't get like really sad about all of the randomness in the ecosystem. Like personally, like when I don't know, growing up in Iran, I've seen like the, I don't know, bad side of the centralization, corruption, not having access to free market, and like not having access to free internet. So I know like at the bottom of my heart, like the things that we are working, maybe not in 1 year, but maybe like in 10 years have something like really like deep for our, like the whole world. Like it used to be just for Iran and like, I don't know, Russia, but it seems that it's actually happening in Western countries as well. So I think it's important, like people like Vitalik, he's also deeply motivated by these kind of values, right? So this is how you can go like really far. And like personally, another thing that got me into crypto in the first like step was like I had a course in surveillance and privacy. So
in surveillance.
Yeah, surveillance and privacy in my grad school, and it was in a sociology department, and it was a really interesting mix of like a professor from cryptography department, Ian Goldberg, and like the sociology professor. And in that course, I learned about like the bad effect of like advertisement industry, right? And I learned like there's a lot of like this kind of deeply intellectual like work about privacy, but we should also understand the capitalism and how it's working and how we can like somehow make it work and not just eliminate them. So it got me into the, like my first research was on working on like an ads mechanism, like an auction mechanism, or like just data sharing mechanism, which is not deeply like extracting your private information. So it's just like this kind of very high impact information and how like they are changing our society and making us think less and follow other people. I think it's like, it has a very interesting like overlap.
Okay, so far I think we've said a lot of good things about research, crypto. Now I want to brainstorm some less good things. Which part about, say, the relationship of this industry, our industry, to research, do you think, which specific parts aren't working well? Or which specific, are there areas where you think we really need more research and we don't have it? Or we're like applying the wrong research to the wrong problem? This is also an open question to the audience. Where could we do better?
One thing that I hate is that we have some like pseudo academic papers in crypto that they're saying that like we've already solved all of these problems. Like it's like shilling, but in like a LaTeX format. And I like, specifically there are some like MEV teams I don't want to mention, but like if you read the paper, you like it's full of misinformation. Like, and there is like money is on the bad side here, right? Because they're incentivized to like publish something that is like purely not true. Maybe it's the same problem that we have with like pharma industry and academia. So it's happening.
Right, you mean sort of like the language of research getting co-opted ultimately to market things.
Even the claims, even the academic claims are like, I've seen it, it's like completely wrong. And it's frankly really hard. There are very few people who read the paper and understand it. But if you write a paper, like 20 pages paper, and say that our protocol has already solved all of the problems, and because of this and that, with 2 optimization formulas, like nobody is going to catch it.
So we kind of lack some sort of ecosystem of research quality control in this sense.
Yeah, I want to continue that. Of course, then I would call it like, noise, too much noise in the research. But one problem which is becoming really big, like it has become big in this Web 2, I'm sure like you might know, like, the history of that Silicon Valley-based Web 2 research, which overpowered some university research outcome, and the specific kind of research was put down as a very prominent one-sided research. And I think the same, and that was due to incentive problems. And the same kind of thing is happening in crypto as well. We see so public-private interactions happening in university space, and some of the problems are getting too much biased. And people are, some of the academicians are looking forward to the very short-term solutions, and running a protocol, like you cannot start a deep mind, right? Like institution. You need to rely on some of this public good research, which either happens through, the state funding, as you said earlier, or maybe, institutions, right? We have like big protocol, Ethereum, Polka, Cosmos, also funding that, but they can do it up to the extent. So I think that problem is becoming more eminent. And also the trade-off, the young PhD students, the expectations are very different when they were like, like pretty much 5-7 years earlier.
What do you mean specifically? How have the expectations changed?
The expectations in the sense of monetary incentives, like quicker monetary incentives, like once one of the reason the researchers or the research-driven thesis was prominent because the people who used to hire them always thought that money is secondary and the research part is the main thing, right? That's how you hire the research-based person. But you see the flipping happening in crypto, and that's what I think you were also mentioning. Then when you are unsure, the value of the researcher, the true researchers goes down. Then there's a classical problem of like you cannot differentiate between who is right, like who is the right guy, right? So
Right. I mean, if the ends of research are driven by the interests of capital, then it's kind of not research anymore as a sort of first principles-based inquiry.
Yeah, capital is important, but it was always subtle, right? It was always not on the forefront. It was not a deciding factor for the research.
Yeah, I want to open this question too to the audience. Are there kind of specific areas in which you think the relationship between this industry and research doesn't work, that you would like to see changed?
We have one here. Yeah. I think one thing that is definitely more needed is the sort of weaving the different dots together. Especially in cryptographic research, there is so many silos, so many very specific points of research that are not connected to each other, especially with dealing with protocol design. You see it, for example, in the industry with things like TE, ZK, MPC, FAG. No one is thinking about deeply the relationship between the four of them and how we can integrate them into something else, for example. And so this type of more fundamental research is needed to connect things. I think Anoma does that to some extent, but I think more systematic ways of sort of highlighting what are all these different fields and how can we learn from them together is very important.
I have I think you have nailed it, right, what's happening. So I have one thesis, like why it is happening. I call it like, the fragmentation of research, right? Because so somehow the market gives premium sometimes to FHE higher, sometimes to ZK higher, and they think FHE, ZK, MPC are now competitors, right? There are less, so that's very short term, right? And if you walk into any academicians and he will tell like, effectively this is you need to combine them, otherwise you will be lagged behind by, I don't know, like, some random centralized database.
I have a good answer. So actually in Fairblock, we have, I call it multimodal cryptography. We are using threshold decryption, like IB, or things like homomorphic encryption and T's. And for the very same reason that they are complementary, and for security or for performance reasons, you need to combine them for many applications. But the challenge here is that in crypto, if you want to really make it, you want to somehow identify as a category, and we are resisting against it. But I see the problem in a lot of teams that they want to be the FHE team, the ZK team, and if you go to the ZK team and ask about the FHE team, they say they are lying. If you go to the ZK team, they say they are lying. The TE team, this is a tribal behavior, right? Because for the same thing that we have between Ethereum and I don't know Cosmos people, and those are bad, I'm good. So I think this is a childish kind of behavior that I agree that we should combine them and solve more real problems.
Right, so maybe this is a good point to brainstorm on a little bit if we have a few minutes here, which is let's take the meme of zero knowledge as an example. So zero knowledge was, 20 years ago, a property of some obscure proof schemes and some obscure academic papers that maybe 50 people in the world knew about. And in the past 5 years, maybe the past 10, but especially the past, more recently, it has turned into a meme with which you can raise capital. And this conversion is not, one might complain about it from a perspective of technical precision because the word zero knowledge doesn't always mean zero knowledge anymore, which is confusing. But on the other hand, it also succeeded in funneling some capital to actual applied cryptography research, which at least I think is helpful. But as you say, this kind of the association of like, we'll invest in the zero knowledge technology or the FHE technology or the MPC technology while it helps actually fund some applied research, positions these things as competitors to each other and doesn't necessarily create the kind of, let's say, incentive for building a more integrated system or thinking about how to use these technologies in ways that are synergistic, that are actually better than like each of them independently. And I'm wondering, can we imagine what would be required for an alternative kind of capital ecosystem that is able to understand these more nuanced distinctions rather than treating different technologies as sort of like investment categories?
So we are trying one solution in our protocol. It's like you can say it is a naive or trivial solution. We feel the users are the people who need to decide, right? But we also know that users doesn't want to read MPC, threshold encryption, ZK paper, right? So what we are trying is to abstract away from the technology itself. We are trying to create a linguistic framework which shows a much more unified approach from the user perspective rather than the underlying technology. So that's working pretty well in the short run.
A linguistic framework. You're designing a language.
No.
Okay.
I mean, like.
More power to you. I'm not.
No. So
okay.
by linguistic framework, I mean the choice of the words are abstracted away from the technology. Like we don't mention like specific.
I see.
Because if you're using MPC, you're using ZK, you can take the academic words, right, and roll it up. Then it creates a contention framework rather than create much more user-friendly words, right, like what they're easily explainable. So that is easier for a person to adopt the technology. And if we are able to show that the integrated technology is adopted well, then more people can follow that and more people can see the profit or the incentive to combine them together and to work together around that.
Yeah, that makes sense. My question, what I'm trying to get at a little bit here, though, is can, say, that kind of approach where we come up with a language to describe the system that is focused on the affordances the system provides to users rather than the technological components used to implement them, right? Can we apply that approach to the whole ecosystem, like to the structure of capital formation?
I don't think so. No,
you don't think so?
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? This is what I'm saying. Like it's in the short run, right? That doesn't solve the structural problem because what you described is a structural problem, right? Here in the structural problem, what you said, like we need much more nuanced research community coming together, trying to have this coordination, trying to drive this towards single goal, right? Different kind of people should meet, right? There has been one of the biggest contention in physics has been quantum versus others, right? And they have been able to make some progress. The applied physics came in, and then was some, they thought like, things can be made in much more collaborative way. So different ecosystem can sit together, right, and move towards a simple goal. And that way, the capital always follow the most productive outcome, right? If you're able to show the most productive result will be due to combining all of this better technology together, then I think it will follow, right? If you believe it, capital follows the most productive.
Right, so we should all collude with each other, and then we can like direct the capital. That's what I'm hearing, roughly.
Actually, in the next group discussion, we are going to go into the differences between the structural approach and the eventual user-centric implementations, which is a kind of a hint, guys.
All right. 2 sentences, closing remarks. What research would you like to see someone produce in the next 12 months? What paper do you want to read that doesn't exist yet?
Let me think. So it's somehow related, but I think we are living in a post-truth era, and it's really hard to understand and trust any academic research these days in any area, like medical research, like news. And I was kind of thinking about like incentivizing like academia to have like more valid data points in a way that, like, for example, you can stake, and if someone can prove that it's like fraud, you can like get slashed. So I don't know, maybe it's like some kind of restaking between like universities. It's a very intellectual idea.
Stake on the accuracy, at least that your images weren't doctored. Okay.
One of the research which I would like to see is, again, more multidisciplinary. What are the economics and sociological limits of all the privacy protocols which we always discuss, right? That includes zero knowledge, trusted execution, right? We most of, in our conversation, maybe is a crypto CT or, informal chats, always the researchers always talks like some of the economic limitations, some of the coordination problem, right? And these are non-cryptographic problems sometimes. And precisely because the things are not going multidisciplinary, like there is a huge gap. So I think that research would have a huge impact over the protocols, I would say.
All right, limits on sociological possibility. You heard it here first. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.